Hello, lovely ladies. So, this evening I'm going to talk a lot more about specifically heart palpitations and how they link with minerals, which not a lot of people think about. So, if you're somebody who's struggling with either panic attacks or heart arrhythmias and you're not really sure where they're coming from or what you need to do about them, or you think maybe you just have to learn to live with them, you're definitely going to want to tune in because that is what I'm going to be talking about this evening. And mineral balancing is actually something that is one of the components of my online program called the Holistic Anxiety Fix. And this is where I take my background as a therapist, my background as a functional health practitioner and a yoga teacher, and I merge it all together to look at anxiety through a bunch of different angles. And the particular angle that I'm going to be talking about tonight is the angle of minerals. And I'm such a mineral nerd. It's super fascinating. So if you want to know what to do about your heart palpitations and how they link with minerals, then you're gonna want to stick around because this helped me, but it also helps a lot of clients. Basically, if you're, as I mentioned before, you struggle with these heart palpitations and things like that, you probably have gone to the doctor and the doctor has said to you, you know what? We've run a test and nothing is wrong. Your heart looks normal, your blood work looks normal, everything's okay. This anxiety is all in your mind. So I don't know if this is you, but this is definitely a common thing that I hear from a lot of the women that I talk to, because the first thing you want to do when you're experiencing that panic attack or when you can feel your heart's kind of like skipping beats is you want to make sure that medically everything's great. And for a lot of people with that experience of anxiety, medically, quote unquote, everything clears, so there's no specific disease. But then you're left with this challenge of, what do I do now? How do I prevent these panic attacks from coming on? How do I prevent them when they get on? And maybe you are somebody who lives your life in fear that the panic attacks are going to show up anywhere, show up in public, they're going to show up when you're driving, they're going to show up with your kids. And so now in the back of your head, you're worried about these heart arrhythmias, you're worried about the panic attacks, and it becomes a really big problem because you don't know how you're going to live your life normally anymore, because now all of a sudden you have this extra big worry about panic attacks. So one of the things I'm going to talk about is the link between minerals and panic attacks. So when we think about how the body works, what actually happens is that when we're stressed, we burn through our minerals. And at this day and age, there's a lot of reasons why we could be stressed. We can be stressed externally from, being really busy, trying to raise 3 kids, from conflicts with other people, from pressure at work. All of those things are going to cause our bodies to burn through minerals. We can also be stressed from internal reasons, exposure to heavy metals. Our detox systems aren't working properly. We're not eating the right foods to heal our body. So when we're doing this, you're burning through minerals. And oftentimes as women, we deplete a lot of our minerals when we're stressed, including potassium. So something like 99% of women are actually deficient in potassium. And potassium is one of those minerals that you're going to burn through when you're stressed. So you might be thinking, okay, so I burn through my minerals when I'm stressed, but I eat food. Doesn't that replace my potassium? The challenge is that our food, A, doesn't necessarily replace the amount of potassium that we're burning through when we're stressed. And B, what happens when we burn through potassium is that a heavy metal comes in and takes its place. So this is where you're going to want to pay attention, because this is where we connect the low potassium levels with the heart palpitations. So first of all, if you have heart palpitations, there's a likelihood that you also have low potassium, because potassium is what normalizes and stabilizes the heart rhythm. So maybe you're sitting here listening, you're going, okay, Jody, that's great, but my blood work says my potassium is fine. So here's the kicker. When we're looking at blood work, our bodies, as much as possible, tries to keep our blood stable. That is its goal. So our blood work, when it's off, then something is really off. So that's when medical care gets involved. That's when we get the disease diagnosis. That's when we get the IVs or admitted to the hospital. But it doesn't necessarily reflect what is going on at a cellular level. So many people, myself included, could have very normal potassium levels in the blood, but cellularly, we're low in potassium because cellularly, we haven't been able to replace the potassium that we've burned through because of the stress. And so this is what one of the main triggers to heart arrhythmias can be, because your body just simply doesn't have enough potassium. So what does your body do when it doesn't have enough potassium? So I'm going to go down a sidebar to explain that. So gasoline actually contains a metal called thallium. And so it used to have lead in it, but we took lead out. So now we have unleaded gas, and we've put thallium in instead. And so basically you're getting heavy metal exposure every time you breathe, because now, because of gasoline, there's lots of thallium in the air. So what your body does when it's low in potassium is it says, well, we need something to replace this. And guess what looks a lot like potassium? The heavy metal thallium. So then what your body does, because it's in the air, is it goes, look at all of this abundant thallium. And so the thallium actually gets stuck on the sodium potassium transporter on your cells, which then blocks the potassium from getting into your cells. And so even if you're eating potassium foods, a lot of that potassium may not necessarily be getting into your cells, because now your cells are thallium toxic. And guess what one of the symptoms of thallium toxicity is? Yep. Heart arrhythmias. So now you're seeing how it's all connected. So one of the ways that I address this with clients when I know that they have high levels of thallium is we high dose potassium. And a lot of times we see blood pressure going back to normal. For myself, I saw my heart palpitations really start to lower because my body now had the minerals that it needed to keep the thallium out and to keep the cells full of the potassium and the minerals that it wanted. So one of the ways that I do this is called an HTMA. So you'll hear me talk about this a lot because I'm a huge mineral nerd. And this is actually one of the add-ons of my holistic anxiety fix. So if you're dying to know what your potassium levels are, this is how I test for it. The other thing that you can do if you're like, Jody, I'm not ready to do this test, I'm not sure that I want to do the holistic anxiety fix quite yet, is that you want to look at the high potassium foods, and you want to start consuming those high potassium foods to help boost your potassium levels. And one of the key foods that you can do right away that actually is high potassium is electrolytes. So having those electrolyte drinks can be a great way to build those minerals back up. And B is coconut water. So coconut water is actually very high in potassium as well. So if you're listening to this and you've tried the coconut water, give me a thumbs up. And if you're somebody who's struggled with heart palpitations, then I would definitely think about potassium and start looking into potassium. And if you want to know more, if you want to know how do I join your holistic anxiety fix and run this HTMA, then you can just personally message me and I will set you up with a complimentary call. Otherwise, have a good evening and know that there are solutions to getting to the root cause of those heart arrhythmias. There is a way to find out.